Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our council meeting, regular council meeting for Tuesday, November 21st. I'd like to start off with the Lord's Prayer. Anyone that wish to join me, please remain seated. Thank you. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Thank you. Dean, call the order, please.
Mover and seconder, please.
Wendy and Keith.
Moved by Councillor Hewitt, second by Reeve Watt, that the regular council meeting on November 21st, 2023 be called to order at 5:35.
All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Roll call.
Mayor Bennett.
Present.
Reeve Watt.
Present.
Councillor Keel.
Present.
Councillor Hewitt.
Present.
Councillor Hughley.
Present.
Councillor King.
Present.
Councillor Wren. All members present except for Councillor Wren.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Wren's away tonight. He's working with different government officials in Toronto, meeting different ministers regarding the airport. Confirmation of agenda. Jennifer and Betty.
Moved by Councillor Gauthier, second by Councillor King, that the agenda of the regular council meeting of November 21st, 2023 be approved as presented.
All in favor? Carried. Declaration of pecuniary interest. Seeing none. Minutes and notes. Wendy and Brian.
Moved by Councillor Hewitt, second by Councillor Hughley, that the minutes of the regular council meeting held October 17, 2023, and the special council meeting of October 30th, 2023 be approved as presented.
All in favor? Carried. November 7th meeting. Betty and Jennifer.
Moved by Councillor King, second by Councillor Gauthier, that the minutes of the council and committee meeting held November 7th, 2023 be accepted as by council, and that the resolution of that committee become resolutions of council.
All in favor? Carried. Municipal reports. CAO's report. Keith, question, and then Betty.
Concerning the CN rail lines, that was supposed to be completed on the 20th.
No, unfortunately, we had to get another extension, and I don't know if Sean had us, but that, basically, it's been nothing's negative, but it's just trying to line everything up, and there's players, we're trying to follow Whitewater. We want to make sure that Whitewater closes. When we close, we don't want to close, and they don't close. So we're trying to work together, and we're kind of having, and then CN is having some issues with some title stuff, and so there's just been a little bit of delays, but we're still moving forward. There's no bad negotiation. It's just trying to get the date properly set. So that's what the reason for that is.
Betty? Okay. Anybody else for Dean? Treasurer. Anything for Sean? We're going to see lots of Sean in a little bit. No, nothing for Sean. Public Works, Mark? I guess we got our call out tonight, Mark. We will be having one.
Yes, yeah, we've had nothing in October, a few in November, and yeah, a little bit tonight. So I think not as bad for our areas. I think more Ottawa's more snow, but yeah, we're kind of changing from the snow to freezing rain and then to transition to rain overnight. So hopefully not too bad.
Okay, thank you. Nothing more from Mark. Under planning for Laurie. Anything further for Laurie? Any questions, comments? Seeing none. And my report. So a few things with Remembrance Day and the Allegiant. We had a warming center meeting in October, which you guys are aware of. I guess the other one is yesterday was another meeting, which I do have on here that I attended, but I did not make it. So maybe Dean, if you could bring them up to date on the warming center. Yeah,
so I attended the meeting on Monday morning, I guess as an update. The PAC, the church had unfortunately voted it down. They weren't comfortable with exactly the location. So they've come up now, the group has come up with a new location which will be located at the Pembroke Farmers Market, and they are bringing in an ATCO type trailer, which is 12 by 52 feet long and wide. They would accommodate up to 30 people, individuals. So they're just working through now the security, exactly how much security they need, and all the logistics, and hopefully have the trailer there shortly. The city has contributed, has agreed to contribute 100, the county's at 80,000, and we of course are at 20. So we have a $200,000 purse there to kind of provide that service, much needed service. So that's, they are gonna create an ad hoc committee for the warming center, which we will have one individual being able to be participated in that group. And I know the county's one, and I think they have one as well, or two, I'm not sure. And I believe Reeve Watt has kind of been asked to do that, so we may have two voices in that sense. But yeah, it seems to be moving forward, and I think there was a lot of positive feedback that it progressed very quickly for a government. You know, we all know that government runs slowly because there's a lot of things, you gotta cross a lot of Ts and dot a lot of Is to make sure things happen. But there was a lot of, everybody kind of moved quickly, so they were all pretty well satisfied with that, and how it's materialized. So everybody seems to be on the right page, and we'll see how it moves forward.
Good, thanks, Dean. Jennifer?
Two things. If you're looking for someone off council, I would definitely sit on that. Secondly, you said holds about 30. What happens when we have more than 30? Then where we're going?
Well, unfortunately, the thing is, right now, there's none, so we're going to 30, and, you know, it'll be a first come, first served basis, and I guess, I don't have the answer to that question. It's just a matter of, at this point, there was discussion as possibly doing extra, but right now the funds are committed to this, and we'll do 30 and see. Hopefully that's all we have, and, you know, yeah, so that's kind of the answer I can give you.
And the grind is still a thing.
The grind is, but they don't do any evenings now. They won't be doing any evening stuff. They're just doing the day programs. And then the evening warming shelter will be that building I just spoke about. They don't put people overnight. They did last year, kind of on an ad hoc basis, from what I gather, but it wasn't really, it's not really their mandate. Their mandate is, you know, day programs, meals, that kind of stuff. So they're getting kind of out of, they're gonna be involved in the organization of it, but they're not gonna, like, it's not a matter of this trailer accommodating 30 and the grind accommodating 30. That's not the issue. No.
It's gonna be a sad situation to
Yeah.
turn away after
Yeah, I know.
31, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't
And
know.
minus 40.
I think, if I could maybe step in for a minute, I think one of the original meetings that was kind of the number they were gearing at from the beginning. I think there's gonna be 14 or 15 lazy boy chairs, because you have to, people can rest in lazy boy chair, but they can't provide a bed because it's not set up
It's not a shelter.
as a shelter. So I think 30 was the number that they said, this is what we got to gear for. If that number increases, I do hear that possibly they might be trying to tarp the outside around the market. So you might get, you know, a few people might be able to, I don't know what the rules are going to be, but they got to start somewhere, and 30 is, I think, a good number. I'm sure there's going to be some people that come and go, obviously transient, whatever, so I'm happy that they were able to find a location. I think it's a great location for this winter. You know, it's not in a residential area, which I think the city was going to get a lot of fight back on that, so we'll see how it goes. I will speak to you about sitting on there. I don't know if I will stay on it once we've got it going, so we can chat about that as well. Thanks for the offer. The only other thing I want to mention from the mayor's report is that last week we had interviews for a new GM at the Waste Recovery Center, as Sue is retiring, Sue McRae. I think she finishes sometime next month. And I want to thank Dean, because Dean was part of the interviewing committee asking all the questions, myself and Andrew Plummer and our accountant. Daniel,
what's his?
Yeah.
Burke.
Daniel Burke, he and I and Andrew did the grading or whatever, and it turned out that we end up hiring Laurie Benjamin, who is a longtime employee at the center. So she has prepared herself for that position, and I think she'll do quite fine. So she takes that job over January 1st. So just give you an update on that. Other than that, unless anybody has any questions, we can have a motion. Jennifer and Wendy. For you, Dean.
Moved by Councillor Gauthier, second by Councillor King, that the council receive the following reports for mid-October to mid-November at the regular council meeting of November 21st, 2023. CAO's report, Treasurer's report, Public Works Manager's report, Planner CMC report, and the Mayor's report.
All in favor? Carried, thank you. Move down to planning, and we'll ask Laurie to come forward, please. So this is regarding community improvement plan, request for retroactive consideration. I'll turn that over to you, Laurie, please.
Okay, yes, we do have a request before us. Normally with the community improvement plan, applications are made and they're approved prior to works being commenced, and then we dispense the funds. In this particular situation, we have one where some preliminary discussions were engaged with the community development officer, and then whether there was a disconnect between the owner and the contractor, we're not sure, but the contractor did complete works and then came back to say they were aware of this program and were asking if the consideration could still be considered for the funding. So as, again, we haven't had as great an uptick this year, so there still are funds that are available. Again, assume it would still only be for anything that was eligible. Each property, it's a maximum of $10,000, so that would be the maximum, but it could be slightly less once we get going through their actual works that were completed to ensure that everything was eligible. Again, should council provide us with that direction to be able to consider this one retroactively. Up to this point, the only retroactive ones we had been considering were for the COVID-19 category, which I will be coming back with a recommendation to remove that category per our direction from municipal affairs when we first put it in place. But just to kind of put it in perspective of, we do have one retroactive category, but the others typically everything is approved and in place before works commence. So this one, it is for 1375 Pembroke Street West.
Questions, comments? I'm in agreement. Recommendation from Laurie, so anybody want to make a motion on it? Keith? And Jennifer?
Moved by Councillor Watt, second by Councillor Gauthier, that subject to all other eligible requirements being met, that council directs staff to approve an application under community improvement plan for works were completed in 2023 at 1375 Pembroke Street West prior to the application being filed.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried. Thanks, Laurie. Okay. Next item is grant request. Sean?
Okay, thank you very much. This is the first one that I have had as treasurer here. I think formally they went to these grant requests came in and went to the former treasurer. This request came in from the Pembroke Area Country Ski Club. I think we would call that PAX, I think is how you pronounce their acronym. I think they've had this in the past. They've requested $2,000, and it appears it is for snow plowing. I have attached, they sent it to our recreation coordinator, Nevada Sargent, and she passed along. In the application, we do have the policy, and the policy says that these must come to council. There's a budgeted item for recreation grants to others, which is where I believe these would come from, for $9,550, and there's about $7,000 left. So these funds, this grant would fall into, will still keep us in our budget allotment. I would just note that in the eligibility criteria of the policy, and it may be something we would look at a future time, but it does say to be eligible, you'd include previous year's audited financial statements. I don't think this group, with their application they put in, they did not include financial statement. I'm not sure if they have audited financial statements. I don't know. So I would just point that out, that we have granted them funds in the past. I would recommend following the same precedent. It's just something we'd have to look at, maybe putting a caveat in there for certain groups that might not actually have engaged a firm for audited statements. So I'm just bringing that to your attention. But I'll pass it back to the chair if there's any questions.
When was the last time we gave them money? Do you know?
I feel like I think we gave them money the year before as well. Because it does say in their application that they did receive grant funds before. So without having the ledger in front of me, I do believe they did receive it the year before as well.
Maybe Mark can help us here too. I think it was more for the parking lot, I guess, for plowing the parking lot.
Yes, so, and they reference that, so historically, the municipality used to basically stop our plow right on the road, take 45 minutes, an hour, and plow their parking lot for them, and it just became some liability and risk that we were basically maintaining under a contract with this group to maintain their parking lot and not on the roads. So we had sort of advised that if they applied for the grant, we would give them the grant for the snow plowing operations in lieu of the municipality providing that service. And it's probably been 6 or 7 years at least now that we've been doing that for them.
Right. The only comment, Wendy, go ahead, please.
I was just going to say to Sean's point that I do think for future, if it says in there that we require the financials, I do think that that should be in there. I'm not saying that we shouldn't support it. I'm just saying for future, I think that needs to be in there for sure.
Keith?
On a similar note, those financial statements, I think we've been a little neglectful in even our recreation committees, and I think that before the grants go out this year, budget should come in for each of them to make sure that they need the money first off, and that they're not building up a larger account than necessary.
And that brings me to my next question, that if there's 9,700 in there, there's 7,000 left, the groups aren't taking the time to submit their budgets to get some money.
So I think from understanding the budget, not as in-depth as I might in subsequent years with more experience here, but the grants to the main recreation groups are in a different section. These funds were segregated for like recreation grants to others. So I'm not sure in the past who those others were. I know there is a group out of Mixburg that has, I think earlier in the year, received funds. So I would agree. I don't know with the 9,550 who maybe we thought. I could certainly dig into the working papers and figure out who maybe we thought, but all I know to date is that there's still 7,000 left in that fund. So,
Well, certainly when we're going through budget time, $5,000-$10,000 is important. The only other, and I'm certainly in favor as well, but I would love to see that they are in Laurentian Valley and they're called the Pemmican Area Ski Club. I'd love to see that change to Laurentian Valley and Area Ski Club, but I know it takes a lot of work to change names. But anyways, that's just a comment. Somebody want to make a motion? Brian and Jennifer?
Moved by Councillor Yulee, second by Councillor Gauthier. That the Council of Township of Laurentian Valley consider the grant request from the Pemmican Area Cross Country Ski Club.
All in favor? Carried. Thanks, Sean. Okay.
Next one, he's got the next one.
Yeah, Infrastructure Ontario loan application.
okay, so this is for tandem truck and plow equipment that I believe was part of, it looks to me is in the 2022, this probably started in 2022, potentially part of that budget. On June 17th, 2022, Council did award tender for the purchase of a 2024 Freightliner truck and plow equipment. So that truck has been received. It was allocated or going to be financed through a debenture. So with any debenture, there's basically two bylaws that we must, that Council must pass or adopt. The first one is you're authorizing the treasurer to apply for a debenture. And then there's usually about a 6 to 8 week period, and then Infrastructure Ontario will come back through that period, and there'll be a second bylaw, in this case would be in February, to actually lock in an interest rate and begin that process. So there's always two bylaws. So this would be the first one. that we would need to pass. Right now, we're just basically saying we are going to apply for this debenture. Come February, if interest rates change and we bring back to council and council decides, you know, maybe there's another way we can finance this, we can, at that point in time, change that financing mechanism. But at this point in time, it was identified to be debentured, so this would be the first step in debenturing that project. Just the financial implications of it, I guess, which would be the most important piece. The current interest rate on a 5-year debenture is 4.74%. So the estimated yearly payment is about $73,000. And then over the 5-year term, we'd pay about $44,000 in interest payments. So that's just for you to be aware of, but I think that I would strongly recommend we would continue with this process at least tonight. And if that, we decide after we're in the midst of wrapping up year end, that maybe we can finance this a different way, then we can look at that way, but this is at least getting the ball rolling on the debenture process. Oh, and one other point, because I know that it can be a point of contention at year end, this will sit as this expenditure will sit as unfinanced on the books, because even though we are identifying we're going to finance it with a debenture at December 31st, we haven't technically finalized that, so it will sit as unfinanced on the financial statements. Because we talked about a similar one earlier in the year. So anyway, with that, I'll turn it back to the chair.
Okay. Any questions for Sean? Anybody have an extra 300 grand sitting around? It would be nice to be able to even pay a chunk of that before we debenture it, but we'll see where we're at. Brian? Oh, you're good? Okay. Have a motion? Jennifer and Keith?
Moved by Councillor Gauthier, second by Reeve Watt. The Council of Township of Laurentian Valley authorizes the submission of an application to the Ontario Infrastructure and Lands Corporation, OILC, for long-term financing of a 2024 Freightliner truck and plow equipment, and to authorize in entering into a rate offer letter agreement.
All in favor? Carried. Dean?
I guess basically, this is just a bit of an update as to where we're going in the next couple of weeks, and because of holiday season, so basically stating the meetings and where we're heading. So what we're recommending because of budget, Sean has been working diligently on the budgets, and we are having a bit of portion today, and then November 28th we'll have a fairly heavy day. December 12th as well, we'll have another day or time there for the purpose of budget deliberations, and that and further that December 19th council meeting we're going to cancel and move the January ones from this, because the second being right after and there's not much duty, we moved it to the 9th, and then the second one being the 19th, moving to the 23rd. So I guess that's what we're suggesting. There's a bit of, and we'll make sure everybody's aware. The only caveat to that is we're trying to suggest that possibly November 28th and December 12th are going to be heavy enough in budget, and we're wondering if we could start them earlier in that afternoons. You know, some thought maybe 1, we could have lunch, bring lunch, and then have the meeting start at 1. If that doesn't work, we could go a little later in the afternoon, but we'd like to kind of be, you know, staff members are all here, and it's fairly heavy, and we don't know how much time we need, so the more time we have. The November 28th one would be nice to start, well, both of them, the November 28th and December 12th, if it's feasible with council, we'd like to start at 1, if that's possible. So I guess I'm asking that now. We'll confirm that, but does that work for everybody if we give you notice this week sometime, at least for next week anyway? Yeah.
I know that for next week, I definitely will have to check to see what's on my calendar already. But
Okay.
for the future ones, I might be able to plan that.
Okay. Okay, so I guess the question, Councillor Hewitt, is if we went next week and we started that one at, I mean, is that getting any time off, or are you safer at a certain time, or just so we can start a bit earlier, or do we have to wait till 5:30 and then, you know, or 4 o'clock, I guess you mentioned. So is that any time you would have to see, or is it just because it's 1 being that early?
I have to confirm with
Okay.
my employer, that's all.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, well, we'll pick a time tomorrow, we'll sort out, and then we'll email everybody and just ask if this is gonna work, and if it is, we'll confirm the time. Okay,
So does
with
it
those-
work for everybody else pretty much, that afternoon one?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we don't do it a lot of times of the year, and it would be good to have staff, and you're also paying staff overtime to be here at night, so.
And it's just more of them, right? In this case, I mean, we're gonna be going the next 3 Tuesdays, well, we're going 4 Tuesdays from today in a row. And also then January, we got 2 as well. So, I mean, we are not changing them all, but these 2 that have budget implications there seem to be a thought of starting a little earlier, so. But anyway, will send out a note, and if it affects somebody, all I'd ask is if you say, no, I can't do one, what's the earliest you can do it? And just respond to us, okay? So that's the motion, so I do pass a motion to that effect.
Okay, good motion. Keith and Betty?
Moved by Councillor Watts, second by Councillor King, or Reeve Watts, sorry, second by Councillor King, that the council recommend that special council meeting be held on November 28th, 2023, December 12th, 2023, for the purpose of budget deliberations, and further that December 19th, regular council may be canceled, and further that January 2nd and 2024, council committee meeting be moved to January 9th, and further that January 19th, regular council may be moved to January 23rd.
All in favor? Carried. Okay, Sean?
Okay, maybe can I just, if people are wondering, I guess, the package, I know we just had a conversation, we did put it on as an agenda item. Sean was working at it. Today we did, and you'll see one of the things that CPI is in today. It didn't come out till this morning, so we needed to hold back, so that's kind of the reason. And he's walking through here. It's more of a, I don't know how you want to call it, an information thing. Basically, there's not a lot of decisions to be made on this budget. It's more just we're walking through some items that the treasurer feels is important to the next step, but it will show some of the implications of the CPI adjustment today, this morning.
Am I good to go, Steve, or Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Okay. Well, good evening, everybody. I am excited to be presenting to you tonight regarding the first presentation in our 2024 budget deliberations. This is my first budget with you. And I'm sure some things might be presented a bit differently than maybe what you've had in the past. Some things might be the same. But I think we've structured it relatively well that it should go off without a hitch. Just this slide here is showing the schedule that we have, and I have provided the package to you, so you can walk through and make notes. And I do have our Deputy Treasurer, Kim Peterson, with us tonight, who's sitting beside Lori. She'll be helping with passing some of the materials and some of the work that will happen after the deliberations. So back to here, I do have the schedule, the tentative schedule that we have. So we're here tonight to speak about user fees, debt, wages, and benefits. A special council meeting coming up next week, which is really the whole of the budget. It's kind of everything put together: water, wastewater, general operating, and then capital throughout the corporation. We'd have a December 12th meeting. So after on the 28th, get feedback from council, come back on the 12th with another presentation of what we've kind of heard. Again, another attempt at it. And if there's more feedback provided, then staff would then go back and incorporate that feedback. January 9th would be a public meeting. So that's a regular council meeting, but we would have at the start if members from the public wanted to make a comment, or they could send comments in to the treasurer, I would make you aware of those comments. And then depending on what those comments might be, if there was any other feedback, but if not, then on the 23rd, we'd have the budget approval with bylaws. So that's kind of the roadmap on that. And I mean, there's obviously other meetings spread out in there. I know December 5th is a normal council meeting, but this schedule is just for the budget piece. So before I get to this slide, just as I go through, there are ample opportunities to ask questions. I do have question slides, but they are broken into different sections. I would just ask that we wait until those question slides and we can walk back through, but sometimes the answer is on the next couple slides. And then when we start to get into questions, sometimes it can go different ways. So it won't take too long to get through each section, then I'll turn it over to the chair for questions. So I have this video, and it might just take a minute to come up. Now, just give me 1 second here. Okay, so this video is from MFOA, which is the Municipal Finance Officers of Ontario Association. They, we're a member of the municipality, and it's really a lot of treasurers, obviously, that are members, and they put together, there's a bunch of different videos, but this one I thought was really important where we're at right now. It really highlights what a municipal budget is at a high level. This is on our website, so residents could go to our budget page. There's a button that says, what is your municipal budget? Now, it's not tailored to Laurentian Valley. You'll hear them talk about the municipality of MFOA, but I think it gets the point across. And it'll just take me a minute to get the volume and everything kind of under control here. Can you guys hear it?
Okay, I would like to help you understand how your municipality develops its budget. We always hear about them, and often this can feel like another language altogether. Before we get started, there's important information you should know. Ontario municipalities, like the municipality of MFOA, receive approximately 9% of all taxes collected, but are responsible for over 50% of the infrastructure. Let's start by looking at what the word budget means. Well, simply put, it's a planned, itemized summary of money that is coming into the municipality and how that money is spent for a specific period of time. It's very important to note that provincial government legislation in Ontario states money coming in equals money going out, also known as revenue equals expenditures or a balanced budget. The municipality of MFOA provides more than 60 services to the citizens of the municipality, so municipal council and administration always have to make difficult decisions to ensure this balancing takes place. There are two main components of the budget when looking at the money going out side of the scale. Operating pays for all the day-to-day activities of the corporation. This includes items such as salaries and wages, utilities, supplies, fuel, and insurance, just to name a few. The capital budget pays for all the new big investments or the rehabilitation of current assets under the municipality's control. So let's focus on how the municipality collects to pay for all these services. For every dollar that comes into the municipality, 64 cents comes from property taxes, 21 cents from grants and subsidies, and 15 cents from user fees and other sources. So, now we've learned what a budget is, how municipalities collect money, and how they spend it. Now let's take a look at how these pieces work together. Money comes in through property taxes, grants and subsidies, and user fees. The money collected is required for both the operating and capital budget. We've already talked about the operating budget, including day-to-day expenses, but it also includes money for funding capital budgets. The capital budget pays for all the new big investments or the rehabilitation of current assets under the municipality's control. This connection is made through three methods. The capital levy method reflects a pay-as-you-go approach. The reserve fund method, which reflects a planned save now, acquire, or use later approach, and the debt payment approach. Okay, so let's recap. 1. A budget is a plan for money coming in and money going out. There are two building blocks to the municipality's budget: operating and capital. 2. The operating budget is like you're paying your house bills to keep the lights on. Just like in a normal household, our bills go up with inflation. 3. The capital budget is like your major outlays: vehicles, house, renovations, etc. 4. Money comes in from three sources: property tax levy, user fees, and grants and subsidies. 5. Money coming in is used to deliver over 60 services to municipality residents. 6. Municipal council and administration, with the input of the public, decide how to best balance the municipal budget guided by provincial legislation. And that is how your municipality develops its budget.
Yeah, I thought that was they have great videos on certain things. They have one on capital budget and they have one on tax rates and stuff. So I think just from a high level and for educational purposes, I think they're great to at least set the tone of what we're actually doing here during this exercise. So when we speak to, you'll hear me oftentimes through this process speak to what 1% of a levy is, and I'll get to what a levy and versus tax rate is in a second. But when I speak to 1% increase or decrease, it's $62,740. So last year, the 2023 levy, or how much we would levy upon the ratepayers to pay, was $6,273,968. So 1% is $62,740. Now, when we get into maybe next week and we have kind of comparators of, let's say, a department, side by side, you'll see percentages. I'll do my best to relate that to a percentage of the levy to try to get us into that mindset. Because, if you have one number versus another number from the year before, it could be like a 6 or 7% difference, but that doesn't necessarily mean the dollar figure is 1% of the levy. And I really try to focus the budget deliberation, or where I come at the budget is from the levy perspective, how much we have to generate or raise from the taxpayer. So the tax levy versus the tax rate, and I know the tax rate is always the what people want to talk about, what people want to compare about, and that's fine when we maybe get to the end of the whole process. But the levy is, again, like I said, the amount raised through taxation. It's calculated as we'll come up with our total expenses. We'll take away the grants, subtract out the grants that we think we're going to obtain. We'll subtract out revenue from user fees, so what residents would pay for certain services. Subtract out any transfers from reserves that we'd use to fund projects, and then that equals a levy. So basically what happens is we go through that exercise, there's going to be a shortfall, and we need the levy to balance the budget. And what you heard in the video is we have to have a balanced budget, and that's basically how we come up with the amount we have to raise through taxation. So what does that cover? Well, it covers capital that's not covered through grants. So you often hear about gas tax and OSIF, which is the Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund, or gas tax now is the Canada Community Building Fund. Those are grants that are given to us, or we obtain, and they're to offset capital. But for capital that we wouldn't have grants for, and we're not going to use reserves, which is basically savings, we would have to use a part of the taxation for that. The levy will also cover operating, which is not covered through grants. Some operating grants would be the Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund. That's a no strings attached grant from the provincial government. We can use that to offset our operating budget. And then another one is Canada Summer Jobs. So that's the summer students are an operating expense, and we sometimes obtain grants. So the levy would cover stuff that's not covered by those. So the tax rate, not to lose anybody on this, because you can get lost very easily. It's a multiplier that's used to multiply against assessment, so property assessment, to determine how much each resident pays. A tax ratio, so the easiest way to describe that is, I think most people are familiar with farm tax, is taxed at 25% of a resident. What that means is their tax ratio that is set by the County of Renfrew is basically 0.25. Residential ratio is always set at 1, and then there's other commercials at 1 point something and industrials at 2 point something. So basically what happens is the ratios are set by the County of Renfrew at the county level. MPAC will give us our assessments. We then have to weight the assessments, so multiply them by the ratios, come up with a total amount of weighted assessment, divide the amount we need from the levy by the weighted assessment to get the residential tax rate, multiply the residential tax rate by the ratio, and you get all the different tax rates. And that's why I would suggest we don't really focus on the tax rate, because it's easy to get lost, and I don't think is a fair way to establish the amount of money you need to raise. But that's the gist of what those are. Also, what I'd like to talk about at this point in time, just before setting the tone, is 2023, our proportionate share of taxation revenue. You can see that the township is the blue in the upper right. For all the money that we collected through taxation, about 33 cents stays with the municipality. 36 cents would go to the County of Renfrew. And then provincially, between education and policing, because we pay the OPP, we're at 30.6%, so 30 cents. Now, when we talk about the levy and we talk about what we need here, we're really focused on the blue and by extension the Brown, because we do have to pay the OPP, and we would raise those funds through taxation. But really, we're focused on the blue chunk. So when people, and this is also for residents, for when they get the tax bill, that and we can harp on it, and we'll probably harp on it till, forever and a day the municipalities exist, but we don't keep all the money that we collect. A lot of it does go to other sources. Just really quickly, in terms of, these are the financial statement categories that you would see, and over time, we like to try to tie it to our budget process, but for revenue purposes, you can see we have property taxation and payment in lieu of taxes. Payment in lieu of taxes are essentially property tax on upper levels of government, so Ontario and Canada, like provincial and federal government bodies. They don't have to pay the tax, but it's payment in lieu of taxes. So property taxation and payment in lieu of taxes are very similar. The user and frontage charges, that consists in our budget of any tax sale revenue, the cost of doing business charges, garbage collection, water and wastewater charges. So those are a little bit different from the fees and charges that you'll see down below. Federal and provincial grants, I spoke about them earlier. Gas tax funding, I spoke about it. Those are really, especially gas tax, that's capital. Development charges are charges that are collected at the time that there's building permits, and those are supposed to, or are intended to pay for growth as outlined, growth-related projects as outlined in our development charge study that we would do. And then investment income's interest earned on bank account, penalties and interest is interest earned on arrears that we would charge people that are in arrears. And then we get to fees and charges, we'll speak about in the next section. And then the odd time we might have a gain on a disposal of an asset. So those are the different categories. In terms of expenses, and again, this is going to pay a little bit more into next week's conversation, but this is how our financial statements are broken out. So I'll present the budget based on that, but I will break out that general government. I'll say here's the council budget basically, and here's administration, but I will lump them into these sections. Just of note is that in a perfect world, in a larger municipality probably, you may have, managers or directors of all these different spots, but it is pretty common to have, like, I'll just use our planner and CMC that, responsible for a lot of planning and development, because planning is the main crux of it, but then also gets pulled into emergency management, which is under protection to persons and property. So it's important that as we go through these sections that I will identify who the staff member is that we would point the questions to at that point, more for next week. But this also, you'll probably get tired of this type of slide in the previous one, because you'll see it at financial statement time as well. So with that, if there's any questions, I'll turn it to the chair at this point in time, just on the original stuff here.
Keith?
I have two questions. Your proportion of the tax revenue coming in, and you say like we're 33%, the county's at 36%. When we send our tax bills out to the residents, do we have that breakdown on the tax bill?
The final tax bill, it wouldn't be broken out saying here 33% is the township, but the final tax bill does itemize education. The interim one doesn't. The interim is just 50% of what you paid the year before.
Right.
The final one will say municipal, education, and I think the county's identified as upper tier or something to that effect. So, but somebody has to, the reader has to want to look at that and follow that flow through. A lot of times they just look at the bottom line, but it is broken out, but not into the percentages like that.
Right. My second question is the payment in lieu of taxes. Do we have any of those within our municipality?
Yeah,
and
yeah.
where are they?
Will there be any MTO owned properties? I think there's, offhand, I don't know the exact properties, but I know the ministries we would deal with. For federal government, there is one, because you have to send them a certain type of document. And then we have MTO properties, ministry, there might be like a Ministry of Environment or MECP or whatever that ministry is. There's those properties. I can certainly have a summary of those properties, but we do have provincial ministry properties in the township.
So, I was just curious.
We have some that we can recover as well too, like the sewage plant from the city. They pay us a grant in lieu because it is in our township. So those kind of things, there's some revenue ones too, as well as expense ones. Just going back to the actual breakdown, it's also in our newsletter that we send out. We do usually do a pie chart there showing where your dollars are spent. And I think, like Sean's thing, that chart is there
Right.
directly, so.
No?
I know a number of years ago, we didn't do that, and, you know, people said, well, you're getting all this money, where's it going? So we said, you know, you can tell her, for blue in the face, saying, we don't keep all your money that's given to you, so we decided, let's put it right on the tax bill so they can at least see it. That's why we've broken it down, that's why the garbage collection, et cetera, is on there as well, broken down. Just showing people where the money's
No,
going.
I'm aware of the breakdown personally myself. Can't say I've actually looked at the tax bill to see my breakdown of taxes, but just for the tax-paying public, I think it's important. Thank you.
Okay, I'll move
Yes, that's
on.
it, Sean, yep.
You good to move on? Yep. All right, so the next section, and I'll get Kim to pass out the schedules. So the reason I brought these and wanted to bring this is also more a little bit more selfish than anything, is with Kim and I starting here, and we haven't been here a year, we don't know all the charges that we necessarily have, because there are quite a bit of charges. So this was an exercise. They already have them, I think, Kim, or maybe they don't. Sorry. So there's a lot of different bylaws throughout, I guess, the history of the Laurentian Valley that speak to charges that we put on for users that might use certain services. So I thought it was important for Kim and I to pull these together so that we, going into next year, know what we're charging for certain things. And also then it gives council the opportunity to, well, we're certainly in some parts recommending some increases, but gives you the opportunity to set those fees. Now, we are allowed via the Municipal Act, Section 391, to have fees and charges for services that we offer. So what I'll do is I'll go through the whole list of them, and I have my presentation follows the order that you have them there. And then what we'll do is we'll come back and say, this is animal, for instance, the first one's animal control. Any comments, concerns, or questions, and then we'll work through them systematically. But some of them tie into each other, so I want to just get through them and then we'll come back. So the first one is animal control. So I've highlighted in yellow first of all, just tried to itemize the ones that we have, and then highlighted it in yellow under the 2024 proposed fee is maybe where we'd want to go. Here we have a pretty nominal increase for a replacement tag. I don't think that probably has ever changed, that fee. And then we have a $2 mail out, and just the thing on the $2 mail out, and it sounds, immaterial, and it probably in the grand scheme of the whole budget's immaterial. A lot of our dog tags, or dog tags, animal tags, because there are cats, are purchased online. So we pay a fee for the payment processor, so we don't get the full fee there. We don't get the full 15. And then we are putting them in an envelope and mailing them out with a stamp. So basically, having this and having at the front end, at the start, if they want to select and get the tag mailed to them, it would be put on just to cover some of those nominal costs of actually doing the business. Building fees, the CBO has recommended no change to the fees. They just passed them in 2023. And so we would keep them for all of 2024 and revisit them into the 2025 budget. So that's this slide as well. Development charges. So that's going to be your third schedule, and I'll wait if we want to get there. But as per the development charge bylaw, section 10 of that bylaw allows for municipalities to adjust the development charges without changes to the bylaw in accordance with Statistics Canada quarterly construction price statistics. So I use the auto area because you can filter down to different parts of Canada. And I selected the auto area because that's where we're closest to. And the change in the residential from Q3 2022 to Q3 2023 was 1.7%, and for non-residential was 7.2%. The dollar difference for a single detached dwelling would have been $47.36. A single attached dwelling unit, $46.48. An apartment of $37.60. This bylaw was passed in I think Q3 or Q4 of 2020 and has never changed. To date, we've brought in about $107,000 in development charges. It is estimated with increases as proposed, that would have been closer to 110, so we're talking about a nominal increase of about $3,000. The reason that our staff are proposing to increase them is they haven't been increased. And if we don't increase them, then it means the next time the study gets done, it'd be a larger increase at that point in time. So that's kind of why we have recommended, at least here tonight, to discuss those. The next schedule is fire fees and the burning bylaw, I guess. And the fire chief is recommending for letters to lawyers and insurance companies to increase. That's currently at $50 and would increase it to $75. He believes that is keeping with similar neighboring municipalities, similar fees. He's also recommending, there's a few different highlights there of taking a fee out. He's not, I guess we don't do many of them to begin with, and is not certain on, I guess if it's proper to be charging for those or not. So his recommendation was to take those out. The two bottom, or in the middle of the page, the two highlights you'll see there, this is for response vehicles. Now, this is where we had a little bit of a contradiction. So under two different bylaws, we had two different sets of rates. So I think in the older bylaw, we had this $200 and $100 fee for the first hour or whatnot. And then in another bylaw, we had MTO rates. So my recommendation would be just to amalgamate the kind of two different sets of fees and just go with MTO rates. Every year, the MTO publishes equipment rates, and that's currently, to be fair and honest, that's currently what we are billing off of our MTO rates. So that's just a bit of a housekeeping note at that point. The next page is mobile food vendors, business licensing bylaw, a bit of in the secondary dwelling bylaw. The only change we're recommending is for the storage trailer and sea can / shipping container from 125 to 130. And the reason is this kind of another contradiction that we had was the building fee, like under the building department, minimal deposit was 130. So this fee should be similar to that. So we're saying, just clean it up at this point in time, make this 130, and it marries basically the building bylaw. So that's that one. Planning fees. So this is maybe where you'll see the largest discrepancy or increase. I guess at a point in time, it was mentioned that these fees should be getting to the point to help offset the actual staff costing to do and the actual direct costs. So the planner has done due diligence on this and is recommending the changes as highlighted, basically all in the administrative piece of the fees. There's 2 pages, I think, to this one. If you check the back side, I believe, on your schedule. And then the tariff fees bylaw 2022-04-022. This was a bylaw, I think, that was put together obviously not too long ago, and it was probably a catch-all on some stuff. The only recommendations we're making is for a tax certificate, nominal increase from $50 to $60. That's in keeping with neighboring municipalities, and it's pretty standard. There's this realty information sheet. We don't get many of these. And to be honest with you, I think there's probably more work in those than there are in the tax certificates. And really, for that fee, you don't really have to make change. It's easier to bring it to 20 than keep it at 15. You'll probably, first thing you'll say here is, well, this recreation bird wool, we're not going to charge for these. The fire fee bylaw that we had that I spoke to earlier has these in them. So instead of having them in 2 spots type of thing, it's get them to have them in 1 spot and then just change them in 1 spot. The reason why this other, it's more, I don't know, orange, I guess, highlight, not yellow, is, and I could be wrong, but I couldn't find where we actually had this in a bylaw. So it wasn't actually in the tariff and fees bylaw that was passed in 2022, but we have charged for it. It might be in another bylaw that I just don't have, but I just thought it'd be easier just to add it here. I'm just highlighting to your attention that it wasn't in this bylaw in 2023 or 2022, so it'd be adding it. And then there's some slight increases on, again, some planning things. And then under the public works for the civic address sign, so the $15 2023 fee was really cost recovery on the equipment itself. had nothing to do with the actual staff time of putting it up. And this 30 probably, I mean, some, I guess if it's in their route or in their where they were going that day, I guess it would probably cover their time to do it, but sometimes there's special trips made to the areas. So it would be our recommendation that we don't just recover the cost of the material, it'd be recovering some portion of the staff time to go out. The $4 increase on the green cart, that's just because that's the actual cost of the green carts now. And then I think on the other one, I guess I would highlight is the water on, water off. Laurentian Valley never had a fee for that. That's if there's a water break and somebody needs to get their water off, we have to send somebody out and respond to that. So there would be a fee to get the water off, a fee to get the water on. Other municipalities do have that. I know Public Works has looked at some other municipalities, what they've charged, and that's the fee that we're proposing. So just a quick kind of summary of it all, I guess. Very nominal in pet licensing, so development charge, looking at increases there. Fire had a few different changes. We had planning had a few changes. Marrying the storage container and shipping container, and then some public works to recover some cost recovery. So with that, Mr. Mayor, I'll turn it to you, and maybe we can go back and just work through and ask if there's questions on each schedule as opposed to jumping around,
Yeah.
if that's okay with you.
Yeah, go ahead.
And, okay, so any questions, concerns on the animal control piece?
Wendy?
I know it's a very small amount, but I'm just questioning the animal control bylaw. So when people register online to buy their tag, will they see the fee that it does cost $2 to be mailed, or can they choose just to come and pick it up? I'm just wondering how that works. I'm just
Yeah.
wondering if people will know, that's all I'm saying.
Yeah, we would have a check. So you want it mailed, check, you want to come pick it up, don't check the box, basically.
Okay, so if they decide, yes, go ahead and mail it, it'll say $2 for, okay, that's all.
If we so chose to keep it.
Yeah.
Betty?
Will is $2 enough to cover a mail out of a tag?
Well, my thought on it was it probably doesn't, but it doesn't deter people from buying the tag, is kind of what I thought. So if it's a $5 fee, now it's 15 to 20, people may not even buy the tag, because really then it's really substantially increased the fee. So it's really, we pay, and I don't have the fee what we pay the vendor offhand to process the tag. It would probably cover the stamp and that nominal fee that we would pay the payment processor. But as for a staff member tracking and all that stuff, no. But I mean, we weren't recovering that anyway at that point in time. What it is it's identifying that that, because I think with the payment processing that we do have coming for this iCity implementation of where people can go on and get their tax information and stuff, if they were to pay their property, like if they were to pay online through that, there's going to be a fee that's put back onto them basically. So it's getting people that do use these services in the mindset that there is some sort, like if you want that service, you're basically offsetting that cost to some extent. I know it's nominal, but if I don't throw it in there, I can't charge for it, and then so it's. So, I guess move on to the next one.
Yeah, it's just.
So building, there probably isn't any concerns unless somebody would have a burning desire to up those, but I don't think that would be the case.
Now, also, Sean, I know, this is the first time you've seen this, and we're going through it at a decent speed, whatever. But if you take this home the next few days and you see something that, oh, I should have mentioned that, or I missed that, just shoot Sean an email, and then he'll bring that into the system next week.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I don't expect everyone here tonight. I mean, you didn't have this really today at all. It's more as highlighting areas. And like Dean had said earlier, it's not so much that these decisions are being made tonight, but it's starting to plant the seed, I guess, for you to think about it. And if we come back next week, like I will design, if I hear it's, for sure we want to decrease a fee that we proposed, that's fine. Then we will design the budget based on that. If we don't have any of that, we'll design the revenue piece of the budget based on these fees. And then obviously if those change moving forward, we would adjust that. So this just gives me the starting point for some of these areas.
Okay.
So we're on to the development charge. bylaw, I guess, or the schedule to development charge bylaw. I mean, like I mentioned before, there had been no change, so.
Well,
I guess my question, because we've discussed it a number of times, is when they ask for an extension, site plan extension, the county has a charge that they charge for it. We don't have one. We were talking about adding one to recoup some of our expenses involved with that.
Maybe I'll turn it to, the planner who might have a bit more info.
Okay, yes, that would be something that would come under the planning tariff of fees bylaw, and I have a note to bring an item back forward with that, with an amount to have as a consideration for council.
yep.
Good,
Move
okay, good. What are we on to here? Fire fees, I think pretty self-explanatory, but again, turn it to you, Mr. Mayor.
The only thing I mentioned, I know Timmy said, take some of the items out he doesn't come across.
There's two parts to it, and I won't speak for him, but I think one was that they're not that, it doesn't happen that often, and he wasn't sure potentially on the legality of
We
them.
could do it, yeah, okay. Okay,
But I'm leaving that to his department to provide the advice on that, so.
Keith? Oh, okay, sorry, okay. Okay, Sean, keep it
Okay.
going.
Again, this one is just the change to marry the, this bylaw, I guess, or this fee with the building deposit. And then you see, obviously, there's other fees in there that we aren't recommending changing, but, yeah. I guess we'll move on.
Yep,
Planning fees, these are the ones that have probably the bigger, incremental increases. Okay. Good, okay. And then I guess the tariff of fees, the tax certificates and realty information, and then the other planning fees and the public works fees. Just turn it back to you, Mr. Mayor, if there's any questions.
yeah, does anybody else have anything else that they wanna add, or? I'm trying to find it, is the cart, or food and cart,
Yeah, I'll pull it back up here. It's mobile food vendors. It's on slide 16.
oh, okay, so, I don't know what the correct amount would be, but, you know, over the years, we've had, various companies that have, you know, parked their fruit and vegetable stands, whether it's McGregor's or whoever it is. I know a number of years ago, we had some of the businesses complain that, these folks are paying next to nothing, like $25 a month, where they've gotta have a roof over their building and pay business tax, et cetera. I really don't think $200 is enough per year, but I don't know what is enough. I just thought I'd bring it up, and if everybody else wants to comment on it, but, you know, it's certainly cheaper to grow all your vegetables and fruit at home, or on your farm, and not have a building to sell these products, and then pay $200 a year to be there 7 days a week. Laurie?
I just want to clarify, so these charges, a fruit and vegetable stand at the direction of council a number of years ago, based on that complaint, that was removed entirely, so that's not something that's allowed to occur, other than a farmer's allowed to have a farm stand on their own property, and we don't have an extra fee for that. So these would be for actually like, again, a French fry truck or a hot dog kind of stand. When it's the other kind of food cart, it'd be like a hot
Okay.
dog or those kind of stand, or ice cream truck. So it's that kind of like mobile restaurant type of idea. And my understanding initially, when the fees were calculated, they did take a bit of a look at the average size versus if you had a commercial business, and tried to do a little bit of a rationalization of what that cost would be if you were being taxed. So there was a thought process with that. Not to say that maybe at some point couldn't be revisited, but that is again, more to the mobile food, specifically prepared food.
So the food cart has a definition attached to it,
Yeah, that's correct.
and it's not a fruit and vegetable stand, except,
That's-
okay. That's fine, that's good, clarification. Anybody else? Okay, keep it going, Sean.
Okay, and I guess, I honestly don't know where we just ended, but, I think we were at the very end of this section, unless there was other comments or concerns, so. So with that, if there really is no recommendation to make any changes as proposed, then that will help us guide at least the, some of the revenue pieces to us next week, so. I appreciate council taking the time on that, it will really definitely help Kim and myself, and maybe other members and members of council, just to put it all in one place, and these are, and I'm not promising that these are all of the ones that, that are there, but they're the ones that in the time we had found, so, and seem to be most popular ones. Okay, so the second section, this is debt. So this is really to update council as we move into next week, and when we talk about capital, where we stand with our debt to date. So we have 5 debentures on the books. Now we technically carry 7, but I didn't include 2 because we're flow through the airport and Auto Valley Waste Recovery Center. We don't, for budgeting purposes, we don't budget expenses for those. We pay them and then we recover them. So I've only included the 5. And there they are there. You'll note that the sewage plant comes off the books in 2025, and then the office expansion would come off the books in 2026. So those are relatively in the short term. We know that we have 2 projects, or well, 1 project and 1 piece of equipment that will be added to that list that I just had, and that's the 2024 Freightliner tandem plow truck that I just presented tonight on. If all things staying the same, we will be debenturing that, unless, like I spoke to earlier, we decide to change. And then we have Roy Street. So Roy Street, well, I guess we'll go back to the truck. We will only budget 1 payment in 2024 because when the debenture gets finalized in February, we'll only have 1 payment that year, so we'll only budget for 1 payment. But then the following year, we'll have to increase again to pick up that second payment. For Roy Street, I don't believe we should budget anything for a debenture payment next year because that project will take time to complete. And then by the time we actually finalize that debenture, the first payment would not occur until 2025. But we need to be aware that we have these, that we potentially are going to fund through debentures, because it will impact our annual repayment limit. So with the 1 payment with the 1 payment for the truck, this is the effect that it's really going to have on from budget to budget. So you'll be, well, how are we decreasing and we're adding a payment? And I asked myself the same question, but it's because basically the way that Laurentian Valley has, which is a great way to do it, structured some of the debt is what's known as a serial debenture. The payment actually decreases as the time goes on. Some places will do an amortized debenture and that payment stays the same. But anyway, won't get too technical with that. But some of the debentures are that way, and that's why we can shave about $23,000 from budget to budget that we need to generate to repay our debt that we have on the books. So I just wanted to outline that, and that's where the line items that they will go into. So how does that affect our annual repayment limit? The 2023 annual repayment limit is set out by the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing was about 1.8 million. And what that means is that's not 1.8 million of a project you can take on. I'll get to that in the next slide. That is how much you can pay back in principal and interest on the loans. Okay, so and the way that that's derived is you have from your financial information return how much revenue you generated in a year. You have to less out grant revenue, and there's about 5 or 6 different items you have to take out that they don't consider as being true revenue to you. And then it's 25% of that subtotal. So for 2023, ours is 1.856. We take out those estimated debenture payments for the truck and Roy Street, we're down to 1.4 million. So what does that mean? That means that estimated at the current rates that we've been quoted, we could have $15.5 million worth of projects that we technically could debt finance and still be in our debt repayment limit. So that's just more for, as we move into next week. But I want to show that we are $23,000 on payments we will be saving. So with that, Mr. Mayor, I'll turn if there's any questions on that.
So what is our debt right now? Do we know that?
Yeah, so, well, what we've locked in, I have that here. So at the end, without the Freightliner tandem plow truck and without the Roy Street, at the end of 2024, we'd have debt outstanding of $4 million, $4,054,000. Our payment would be $509,000 in 2024. That's if we decided we weren't going to debt finance the truck and Roy Street didn't exist. So because we haven't locked those in, this is just where we're kind of starting the year and how it would shape up at the end of the year. Then we would have the truck and Roy Street at some point in time, the truck coming on next year. This would be how the budget to budget would compare. So what we'd have, I guess, sorry, I'm losing my words here a little bit, but what we budget as repayments. And then that's how it would affect our debt repayment limit. And then this is where we would end up 15.5 million. If Roy Street, tandem plow truck, we debt finance, we still have that amount of projects that you could technically take on by debt.
Maybe just a comment, if you go back, Sean, to actual debt right now. So you can realize too, make note of the maturity dates. So 2 of them are coming off between 25 and 26, and then we have, you're staggered through there. So, you know, next year in 25, we will see the sewage plant come off, and then the office expansion will be done in 26. So there's always some coming too, so that gives you, obviously that payment comes available, I guess, monthly, that income.
Okay. Questions? Okay.
Okay, and then the final area of tonight, but it is a very large piece of the budget and really will help us, I guess, on our next steps for next week, is the wages and benefits. So Laurentian Valley has a policy, HRB 01, the compensation grid policy, where the compensation grid is adjusted based on the COLA, or cost of living, or CPI index, whatever term we want to use, as of October. That came out this morning. That is why I didn't have this finalized, because I need to wait on that number. In that policy, it says that the treasurer will present a report outlining the rate of inflation and its historical data. And then it goes on. There's a few other bullet points there, but basically, if it's 0, the grade stays the same. So as part of that, my duty is to bring you the history. And so the history is outlined from 2017 to 2023. The kind of left column is what the October CPI was. And what I mean by previous year is 2017's budget year compensation grid movement was based off of 2016 CPI. So that's why I put in previous year. And then what council awarded. So basically you can see council awarded what was that number. So it was stayed with the policy. And I know at a previous meeting was October any more beneficial than any other month, and this looks like a little bit like a Christmas tree, but there is a little bit of method to it. So the red numbers are when it was less than October, and the green numbers is when it was higher. And I do have it here. There are 9 red highlights which indicate that October was higher, so there were 9 times out of here. There are 7 green highlights that indicate that October was lower, and 5 black that October was the same. So the point is that I don't think there was ever any, October was a month that was strategically picked. I think it was just the time of the year. And then it gets even more highlighted in this sense, is that October came in at 3.1, and this is this year's indexes. So September, August, and July were higher. June was lower. So I think it just paints a picture that it's what they in a finance course I had, they said stocks move at a random walk, which means that you can't, just because of what happened in the past, you can't predict the future. It's a random walk, and that's basically I think what happened here. So anyway, that was just more history than anything. So 3.1% is the cost of living, and so we'll discuss that in a few minutes. I want to show here, I guess, is when I put together the wages and benefits package, or that part of the budget, I break down, what positions we have and whatnot. So I think it's important that we have an understanding of the full-time equivalent staff members that we have here, right? Because sometimes, again, similar to the tax dollar and us collecting it all and keeping it all versus what actually happens is sometimes, there's people think there's the perception, I guess, that there's a lot of staff and whatnot, but this is just painting how much staff we have with full-time equivalent. So including our, students and non-full-time people, but bringing them into a full-time equivalent. So you can see that in 2023, we had the equivalent of 22.5, and then 2024, 23.7. And really that's, I believe, is driven by the recreation, I guess, the position that was added, coordinator that was added in this year. So, and then when you get to the 0.2 versus the 0.7 versus 0.5, I mean, we're talking getting into if there was a bit more hours, for students versus whether is it 15 weeks or is it 13 weeks or is it 17 weeks that we budget for, you kind of get into those. So I wouldn't spend too much time on those. I think the biggest difference is the one position. So I just lay out in the next couple of slides where those positions reside. And so general government, I won't read through them all, but you can see we have them listed out of what positions fall into general government. Then we have protection of persons and property, and note that the CBO and the fire chief and the fire group falls into there. Transportation is public works group. So you can kind of get a sense there of what we have. Planning and development, and then recreation and culture. Now, I will note that it's not super scientific in the sense that we do have we have no I'm not showing any environmental, which would be your water, wastewater. We do have staff that would some of their time would be allocated there. I don't have the breakdown of a history of what we should budget there. This is where they're budgeted basically full time. I know with the planner, I don't have any of her hours right now budgeted to CEMC, which would fall under protection of persons and property. It's all in planning. So this is a starting point for sure. And till I get a little bit of history, and I can start then maybe saying, well, some public work staff work X amount of time in water and wastewater, so that's actually an environmental. So this is where they're budgeted just full-time purposes. So this here is to just get across where we are today in 2023, because when we speak about budget to budget, the question might come up as well, is there a surplus sitting in today, or is there something, that we're going to have extra left over in 2023, therefore that's not a good number to budget off of. I can tell you that we're 92.5% through our salary and wages budget, which is pretty well right on budget. We have 2 pay periods left. Council has 2. Fire has 2, and us staff have 2 pay, even though we're bi-weekly, we have 2 pay periods left. It is my estimation based on that we'll be very close. We might be over, we might be under, but it's going to be very, very close to the 2023 budgeted number. So this is just to point out that the budgeting, I think, was done fairly well, or very well if you're listening, former treasurer. And so that's where we're at today. So the 3.1%, what is that effect? And again, I'm bringing it back to the effect on the levy, but I just want to reiterate that some salaries that I presented will be pulled and they'll be paid by user fees. So water rates and the sewage rates would have to pay for some of the salaries because we'd have hours. But just as a group, as a group right now, the effect at 3.1% on the grid is the equivalent to 3.79% on the levy, which is the amount we tax, and that's about a $238,000 difference. Some drivers, and I know some of them are minimal, but we put them on there. Our WSIB rate would be increasing, CPP is going up, we have the 1.2 in full-time equivalent, that cost. What we did, I know, and I watched the budget meeting last year when the former treasurer presented, and I remember her saying almost verbatim, is she budgeted where people were on the grid at that point in time. So if somebody was on a step 1, we budgeted as a step 1. And I've done the same this year. So the effect that you have year to year when you budget that way is if you have staff members that aren't at the step 6 and there's kind of a double whammy you will receive in the next year, because if the staff member has received their performance appraisal and is moving up from, let's say, step 2 to step 3, well, they have that increase, plus they've got the increase coming with however the grid moves. So at some point in time, to smooth out, like think about when you want to do roads and stuff, how you want to smooth out those transactions throughout year over year. At some point, probably you should do the same with the compensation grid, is that, because then if you're budgeting, and most people, as Laurentian Valley has, are getting to that area because of experienced staff, then your hit each year is only really on the grid moving, not staff and grid moving type thing. But, so I try to do is say, what is the cost of employees moving up, and then what's the cost of the grid increasing? And it's not, again, very scientific. It gets close to that 238, but that's your drivers of what make up that change. I'll get Kim maybe to pass out for you to keep and for you to look at, but it will be the compensation grid. So where this would be this is the proposed Schedule A to the employment bylaw, and the second page of that is the Schedule B, which has a couple other different things in it, the student wage, etc. There are 2 highlights on here that just as staff we're trying to work through. Would be the water and wastewater operator on call. So that's why that's highlighted as TBD. We will report back with what staff are recommending for that at a later date. And then there's this ORO, this overall responsible operator, which has to do with water. We'll also report, but we're trying to get some data from other municipalities and formulate how we can present that to you. But that is really the salaries and wages in a nutshell. And so with that, Mr. Mayor, I'll turn it back to you for comments or questions and concerns.
I guess I have one on where you list the drivers of the 3.79. So I understand the CPP and WSIB and the incremental steps, but the 1.2 full-time equivalent at 120 grand, so we've increased by 1.2 staff overall. But we all know the staff member wasn't paid 120 grand. Does that factor into all the other costs? Like, is that UIC and?
Yeah, so that's your so I know I have CVP and WSB here, but that's your CVP, EI, your OMERS, your the Manulife benefits, EHT. That's everything that you would see on your pay stub, basically. That would be covered there. So it's not. And it's a great point, because it's not just, that's the salary, that's all encompassing what the township would pay or have to pay for 1.2 employees, basically.
Okay.
Yeah, and I just wanted to reiterate, that's 1.2 employees, that's not 1. If you take a 1, then you can assume it's 100, and that's the cost of the new stuff.
Okay. Okay, yeah, it's just, okay. Betty?
On the full-time equivalent page, will that number change next year? Because I know there's no student, like, will there be students next year that number will change then?
Yeah, so sorry, I should have pointed out, what I did here is I moved students into their area. So I know general government, it's the same, but general government had a little bit of the former treasurer and me for 2020, had the former treasurer and the new treasurer budgeted, so it kind of offset that the student coming in, and there was some other there was another and I don't know the position, but Colleen Smith I think had a month budgeted in there as well. So there's so I've taken students and actually put them into the areas that they were in. So you'll see transportation has 10.2. That's because there's now 1 point. I just moved the student into that area because that's where they would be allocated to. It's a great point.
Because there was other staff where, was Katie full-time last year? But Nevada wasn't recreation all year, so in your full-time staff, there was clause.
You bring up Katie, I guess Katie may have a maternity, there was a maternity there, she was away for some of that, I think, too. I mean, there's always those years where people come and go and we miss a month, or not normally do we double up, and this year we did do a little bit of doubling up with the treasurer because of senior staff for a month or so, or whatever that was. And then the building inspector, as we all know, we had that for a year, so that's off the books now, so that's where we gained some of that. But that's always, it's hard because through a year's a long time when it comes to staff. People do shuffle around and there's breaks in a little bit of departments. By the time you get notice of 2 weeks and you got to recruit and it takes you 2 months, then you have it 2 months before you don't have that salary. So that's the little rivers and valleys that we have.
Keith?
So just for clarification, for the admin salaries and everything that we've talked about here, our minimum levy increase is 3.79% for 2024,
Well,
approximately.
the effect on the corporation would be the equivalent to 3.79. Some of that is going to have to be paid by water and wastewater rates, which
Right.
wouldn't be levy. Because I don't know at this point today how I should split those out. Is it 5%? Is it 10%? I'd have to do a little bit more. That's part of next week's presentation because that number is likely going to come down because some's got to get allocated to water paying for it, right? And wastewater. So, but the effect on the whole, if everything being equal, if we didn't have water and wastewater, but we had everything being the same, that would be the effect.
But then we have public works to add in for road improvements and things like that as well.
Yeah, there's the operating piece, I guess, and the pressures there, and then the capital pressure as well. Now, I know there is a policy, I believe, with each year having 1% increasing for capital projects. So, yeah, I would say, and that's part of, and that's part of the when you have those back and forth of when you maybe lose a staff member and then you gain a staff member, but they're at step 2 or 3, we're gonna face those in some years. That's just the nature of the way that it's been budgeted, or that we have budgeted. That's a common way to do it, and it's a fine way because you're actually being fair in that year, taxing for what you're going to use in that year. It just means, however that moves the next year and that person goes up, you're going to experience that roller coaster, if you will.
No,
Those years.
understood.
So,
Thank you.
Right? How is it? Have your mic on, Brian?
How is it that you can calculate or count on the student grants? Because they're not a guaranteed thing each year, and that varies from year to year, so it should almost be, an extra bonus, not budgeted that you're going to receive the money, that there is no guarantee that you will?
yeah, that's a really great point. Yeah, I know I guess it's been traditional here that you maybe get 1, maybe 2 a year. I know at my former place of employment, I think we got maybe 3 or 4 kind of thing. So with students, we're talking, it's not big, huge dollars. So I think it's prudent to at least budget. What I've done is I budgeted what we would get if we got for those. It's the minimum wage for only half of the hours that we would have paid. So I have budgeted revenue in for this, and then what happens sometimes is, honestly, some of the students quit. Sometimes we can't fill them, so it kind of plays itself out. But it's not large dollars. But you are right. We probably shouldn't budget for having a grant for all of them. But so far, with the number I've presented, there is budgeted revenue there.
It just adds. You never know what, there was years where we got 4 students, like funded for 4 students, and now it's not full rate recovery, of course. But the last few years, unfortunately, the federal government has dropped that program down, and I think we had 1 or 2 last year, like funding wise. But we still consider, having students is beneficial, not only to them for an experience, but it's also beneficial to the corporation because it is cheap labor, as we call it, and I don't want to call it anything else other than that, but we get a lot of services done very well at a lot less cost than having full-time people, and we can provide a little bit more to the parks and all that kind of stuff. So it's good value. It's an all-around good program, and, whether we get the funding or not, and the funding is not as good as it used to be, there's no doubt.
Betty?
Yeah, I agree. I've dealt with the student summer program as well. But would it be advantageous to budget for a paid student position? And then if we got the grant, that would be a bonus? to deduct?
So, yeah, so what I've done here is I budgeted for 5 students paid, and then I went and researched the grant, how much they'd pay. They basically pay adult minimum wage, but for half of the hours. And so then I budget for that revenue. Now, if I said, you know what, I'll only budget for 1 student, it just means that that 3.79 and that 238 would increase by the amount that I wouldn't have budgeted for. So it's a, yeah, so.
I think you're fine, just leave it in the way it is. We're not talking massive dollars here, one or the other. Right.
And we will try our best at the grant.
Questions, Keith?
Just a comment, I think tonight's run through this has been very beneficial and well done. Thank you.
Betty?
I second that. I mean, for someone being new to council, I actually understood it, which was really good.
Now, moving forward, so you've seen the 3.79, and you know we're doing 1% for capital. Giving Sean and his group a goal for next week, where do you see us being for a budget increase this year? Keeping in mind it was 6.9 last year, is where we ended up.
I don't know if it was 6.9, that was the
Ended up,
salary,
yeah,
that was the
being
salary,
lower.
that was the salary concept, but you're actually, we're talking, there's 2 things here we need to decide. One is what the mayor's asking is, we'd like to get a sense from council of where you'd like to see the overall increase or decrease, I guess, if you want to put it that way, you have choice. But being realistic, what increase do we see ourselves going? Now, and I did mention this to Sean and the mayor tonight, I mean, percentages always, we use percentages and say, 5%, 6%. It's really not a great statement because the percentage goes higher, but that doesn't mean the dollars generate, because as you can tell, 1% to us is only $62,000, where you get into larger municipalities, the 1% can be 300 and 250 and all that kind of stuff. So it makes a significant difference. Now, they would have bigger challenges too as well, but just bearing on that, where would council, and we're just using a percentage, where do you like to see, where would, in your own minds, where do you see yourself going? Not to say we'll try and aim for the best case scenario where we're all at here, and then there'll obviously be a fruitful discussion and an actual discussion of where we're going to be. But where, is council saying we got to be below 5, or we got to be below 10, or we want to be at 7? Or, where are we? I guess is what we're kind of trying to get a sense of. We're not holding you to it. You're not going to get told next week, well, you said, 5, and we're at 4, and But
Jennifer?
I would like to keep it below 7.
Everybody else? Keith?
I think it's a little premature to really come up with something until we see the full plan, where we want to go with public works. I know we talked about a road tour, for road improvements and things like that. I think that the way we've done it before, you wait to the end and you actually carve out the percentage increase.
But I think it's important for staff to have a direction of saying, I know last year, I think Dean and I and Sean were talking about it earlier, that we come in somewhere around 5, 5.5, and then we decided to do another road and a half or something, and we ended up at 6.9. So if council is happy with under 7, or would you prefer to be at 5 and then have that little bit of leeway to move up? It just, if maybe we can say to staff between 5 and 7 to start with. Would that be reasonable to council? Wendy?
I personally am this is only my number in my head, I would like to see 5 rather than 7, but then have some leeway if you say, you know what, we have to do these projects, then after we've seen some data, then I'd be maybe willing to move more.
Yeah, because again, Mark is going to paint us a picture of how roads, so we're not going fast enough in repairing our roads, so that's going to be a big part of it. Brian?
Yeah, unfortunately, we're almost at 5 before we have any capital projects in there, and so I'd like to see the capital project list, because you don't want to keep pushing things down the road, and you want to maintain your infrastructure and your roads, and we need to know where we're at on those to make sure that we're keeping up with it and not
Okay.
having things fall to pieces.
Is that enough direction for you, Sean?
Yeah, and I think it's pretty standard that we'll try to ensure that the operating component, obviously there will be increases, we saw with the wages and salary piece or whatever, that we're, trying to find efficiencies in the operating piece, because we know the capital is going to be what's the driver. But we'll do our best to present and put together what we think is realistic in that frame, and we'll frame the presentation to say, once we, sit down again later this week, is that we'll have a better understanding too of, this is what we can do in this parameter, this is what we believe we can do in these parameters, and present that to you for decisions.
Okay. Now, the second part of it is the CPI. We need a motion on that tonight?
No, I think it's just direction. I think if council, and the issue here is, obviously, we have a policy that we've been following for 7+ years, maybe 8 years now. And we went through this last year. It was more difficult last year than it is this year, I can honestly say, because last year it was a number that was really high and it was difficult, but council was grateful enough to do it, but realizing that we did have some 1.4s and 0.7s where other people were getting more money than that. I know that for a fact. So I think we have this policy, and I think it shows that it's working. CPI does work. It fluctuates. I guess if you're standing on one side of the table, you wish you would have took it in June, but if you're not, you could have took it in September and it was higher. So, so I think, we're going down that path. And we appreciate that they're tough times, the numbers are tough to come about, and the funds, there's only one taxpayer. But everything is increasing, and I think the policy is working, so, but we just need some kind of, if council's in favor of continuing with the policy, we'll move forward, and that's where we'll aim the budget at, and the bylaws will be passed based on that.
Okay, council comments on that? Everybody good with 3.1, keeping it as it's going? Now's the time to speak, please. Okay, all right, thank you, have direction there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
All
I
right.
guess just to finish off, just to reiterate, that's the schedule. So there's 2 spots, take it home with you. Put one in your fridge and one in your vehicle or wherever you need. And anyway, thank you, and we'll see you next week.
And we'll send out tomorrow we'll send out the notice with regards to time requests, and if anybody has any problems with the time we're suggesting, then certainly let us know. We'll adjust.
Okay, thanks, Sean, good job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, down to bylaws, Dean?
Yes, move in a seconder, please.
Jennifer and Brian?
Moved by Counselor Gauthier, second by Counselor Ugly, that the following bylaws be enacted and passed and be read a first, second, and third time, be numbered and signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation, and be engrossed in this bylaw book this 21st day of November 2023. Bylaw 2023-11060, waste collection bylaw. Bylaw 2023-11061, adopt a community safety and well-being plan. Bylaw 2023-11062, 2024 tandem truck and plow equipment debenture.
All in favor? Carried. Council comments. I'll start off. I failed to mention in my report, it was in there, I got a picture taken with a new fire truck. The fire chief invited me over, and I was so impressed that there had to be 15 of the group there. The truck arrived, he phoned me, he was supposed to arrive at 10 from Ottawa, the company he bought it from, and it arrived about 10:30, called me, I come over. But I was so impressed, I figured just Mark and I and Tim, and there's so many in there, they're all so excited, and it's a pretty nice truck. It holds a lot more water. It's been a long time coming.
Yeah, about a year and a half.
These guys are pretty excited, so good for them. Good for our township to see a new truck like that. So anyway, I want to bring that up. I also want to bring up parade. We don't have a Do we have a float in the?
Yeah,
this year?
I think I would imagine if you went out to garage, I think Nevada's working on it as we speak.
Oh, jeez, okay.
So, it is pretty neat. I think you have to see it. They had a good concept and it's coming together pretty well. I know there's been help from a lot of staff members, so we certainly appreciate that. And, just to add to that, so it will be entering the Pembroke Parade this weekend, going to Petawawa the weekend after. And then on the 14th, it will be at the volunteer Christmas party in the garage, kind of last year where we placed it. It will be there as well, which leads me to say that we are having the volunteer party on the 14th of December. We'll get you the times and place then, but we suggest that all the volunteers will come in and we'll have a bit of a meet and greet and some.
Similar to last year.
Very similar to last year's. Also, what we've done this year is, we have never done this in a long time, that staff and council are asked to come and join into a bit of a dinner and an evening, and we're gonna have it at Allison Fraser, and spouses and partners are welcome as well. It's at Allison Fraser. There will be a meal, some mingling before, and then they're gonna have a casino night, so we have 3 tables. So bring all the money you can bring. No, we are gonna use.
Put towards the budget.
We are gonna use, we're generating money for the township. No, we are gonna give Monopoly type money, and everybody will play and gamble in the evening. Whoever makes the most money gets a couple of prizes, so we'll do some prizes that way. So it's kind of a mingle thing. It won't be a long evening, I don't think. It could be a long evening, I don't know, but that's on the 15th, so that's the night after the 14th, so it's 2 in a row. But, like I said, spouses and partners are invited, so you will get an invitation for that.
Okay. Thanks, Dean. Any other council comments? Wendy?
I just wanted to say that the handy bus is having the polar bear dip again this year in February, and I am not participating in that. I am not doing that, but I just wanted to put that out there, and I believe there will be sponsorship sheets that will be here at the township office. And so if you're so willing to do so or know someone, feel free to do so. That's their fundraiser. That's the huge fundraiser, so.
Brian?
You did say it in just with regards to the cross-country ski club, that it should be Laurentian Valley, not the Pembroke Area Cross-Country Ski Club. I'm just wondering, you know, it doesn't happen if you don't ask, whether we should send them a formal letter requesting that. And also, are they flying the flag, the Laurentian Valley flag there? Again, just to identify it as a...
I don't believe they have a flagpole there, from what I remember, but, I mean, it could be.
But it really is a gem of the township. It's a
It
great
is.
thing, and we should identify it as being part of our township with a flag, and maybe suggest that Pembroke isn't probably giving them any grants or funds. And
Well, it's the same as going with the skating club. You know, we're not called the Pembroke Skating Club. We're called the Laurentian Valley Skating Club because we're in Laurentian Valley. And yeah, I was waiting for other people to jump at that. But, you know, when you first look at it and then the next line says they want $2,000 from Laurentian Valley, I just kind of look at it and go, okay. So yeah, maybe, are we going to write them a letter to tell them we're giving the money? How does that work, Sean?
I don't actually know. I got an email asking about where it was at, and I just said it was coming to council. And I actually think the email got re-delivered back to me. But I said it was coming to council, and that we would I would anticipate approval and send in our next check run, which would be next week. So we certainly could put some sort of letter. I don't know what's happened in the past, to be honest. But we could put some sort of letter and have it with a check.
I wonder if it would be better if there was a conversation just with the president or chair or whoever their
Yes.
group is, and we just have that conversation with them, as opposed to saying formally that,
Yeah.
right, we're not gonna base it on them. I'm assuming we're not gonna say, if you don't change it, we're not giving you
No,
money.
no, no.
But So I think maybe that's the concept, so I'll make a note here and we'll reach out to them and
Okay.
at least have that conversation, saying you ever consider, okay.
Okay. Anything else? Comments? Seeing none.
Note and file.
Note and file.
Mover and seconder.
Jennifer and Keith?
Moved by Counselor Gauthier, second by Reeve Watt. That any item not specifically addressed by motion of the council in a regular meeting of November 21st, 2023 be noted and filed accordingly.
All in favor? Carried. Confirmatory bylaw. Wendy and Brian.
I don't have the number. Does anybody have the number of the bylaw? Sorry, I didn't get that.
2023-11-063.
063? Okay, that makes sense. Sorry, who was mover and seconder?
I remember.
Wendy? Yeah. Moved by Counselor Hewitt, second by Counselor Hughley, that be it resolved that the Township of Laurentian Valley approves confirmatory bylaw 2023-11-063 as having been introduced, read a second, third time, and said bylaw be numbered and signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation this 21st day of November 2023.
All in favor? And one more.
Adjournment.
Jennifer? Keith?
Moved by Counselor Gauthier, second by Reed Watt, that the regular council meeting of November 21st, 2023 be adjourned at 7:20.
All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much.